Category design is, at the end of the day, it's a way of looking at the world that we believe is the ultimate business strategy. If you think about the core of how you grow a business, there's kind of a few classical ways you can kind of, take share from somebody else. That's called competitive strategy. So Fernando, you and I are both in the water business, and for me to grow, you have to lose. And I would say 90% of the world works that way. If you cannot answer the question of what problem you are solving and for whom you are solving it for and why it matters to them, you are 100% a mercenary. You may not look like one, you may not act like one, but you are aimless and without focus. And if you are successful, it will be accidental and it'll probably be fleeting and maybe even unsatisfying at some level. And then the third way to do that is to create an entirely new pie entirely. That's what category design really is. We're not about being better, faster, cheaper. That's the first bucket. We're not about being the best or the fastest or the most expensive. And that's the middle one of let's make the pie bigger. We're about being different and being the only.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Viral Genius podcast. I'm here with Eddie Yoon, one of the category pirates. Eddie is a regular contributor to the Harvard Business Review, and he talks about super consumers and category design. And he is part of a band of pirates together with Christopher Lochhead, with Katrina Kirsch, and they occasionally get together with the original pirates, Al Ramadan and Kevin Maney, when they wrote the first book on category design, Play Bigger, in 2016, and then Niche Down. And then since then, they've published a whole bunch of other books, The 22 Laws of Category Design, Snow Leopard, The Marketer's Guide to Category Design, the Complete Guide to Category Design, etc. So welcome, Eddie. Where does this podcast find you today?
Thanks for having me, Fernando. It's all good. I'm doing well. We're ready to launch we're finalizing our latest book, and, super psyched about, I think the future is very bright. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, I think your latest book is Christopher Lochhead, your fellow pirate, shared a cover image on LinkedIn about lightning strike marketing. So, and he said that it's going to be $100 and it's going to be worth everything. And I'm super excited for this because this is something that I kind of realize after the fact I'm kind of pretty good at. So for the purposes of educating the audience, tell me a little bit summarize what category design is, and then we'll kind of get deeper into it with specific focus on my target market.
Sure thing. So category design is, at the end of the day, it's a way of looking at the world that we believe is the ultimate business strategy. So some might come into it through marketing, some might come into it through, technology or innovation. But if you think about the core of how you grow a business, there's kind of a few classical ways you can kind of, take share from somebody else. That's called competitive strategy. So Fernando, you and I are both in the water business, and for me to grow, you have to lose. And I would say 90% of the world works that way. It's a zero-sum mature industry. And often some of the great strategy books like Competitive Strategy, then, by Michael Porter, an amazing book, important to the canon for business, but it's predicated on the military, which is zero-sum. I would say in the last 30 years, the concept of innovation, continuous optimization and improvement, from Six Sigma to Kaizen to consumer innovation and all that. And that's kind of making the current market bigger. So you grow the pie with it. And that's actually a more effective strategy just because there's all boats rise with the tide, but the company that's doing that is actually a better equipped to capture all the upside. And then the third way to do that is to create an entirely new pie entirely. That's what category design really is. We're not about being better, faster, cheaper. That's the first bucket. We're not about being the best or the fastest or the most expensive. And that's the middle one of let's make the pie bigger. We're about being different and being the only. And so that is, in essence, what the vast majority of startups will actually do. And I would say the legacy Fortune 500, when they got started, that's how they got there, was being different and being the only. And then now, sadly, I think there's a lot of businesses that are run by what I would call trust fund managers. They didn't build the business. They didn't found it. They inherited the brand or the business, and they're kind of running it. And they are about as effective as, a Nepo baby running a business because they didn't have to do the hard work to solve the problem are probably more mercenaries and missionaries. And so that's kind of where I find ourselves to be, and why we write is in part to unleash 100,000 category designers into the world by helping them remember that everything that they've been taught about is probably wrong because it's predicated in this kind of former, zero sum, let me make the pie bigger versus let's create something entirely different. So that's the thesis of category design.
Yeah, and it kind of one of the things is you question premises, you slay holy or sacred cows, and so for example, competition is sort of core to the capitalist ethos. At least that's kind of what you're taught in school, bro. Growing up or in business school. You got to compete. It's a very American ethos. But the category pirates teach to create, to not compete, which I think is such an important mind shift. It's sort of like you almost have to sort of re-look at the world, rethink the world, and kind of refocus your eyes to see something that was kind of already there, but not there in your reticular activating system, if you will. And I think that's so important. What do you say to people who think that this is kind of unreachable for them? And I'm thinking specifically for smaller bootstrapped startups. I work with a lot of them. A lot of them make up my audience, right? These are not the ones that got the Andreessen Horowitz Series C $100 million investments. These are people that maybe are bootstrapping or getting the friends and family rounds, who might think, yeah, that's fine and well for the big guys, but what about a small company for me, with regards to category design?
Well, the good news is that there are no companies that are born fully formed, that they all started out small at some level. So that's kind of the first thing to remember. And that the second thing is that it's really about understanding that business and life is hard. So you got to choose your hard. It's not easy to compete with other people, especially if you're just starting out. And in fact, going up against the 800-pound gorilla, I would suggest not a good strategy for success. It is not easy to launch the best version of something in a category that you didn't exist in, and it's not easy to create something entirely new. Now, the degrees and the nuances of the hard are very different, right? So in the first one, if you want to be emotionally safe but executionally struggle, then yeah, go ahead and compete with the number one market leader for, the math of it is, category kings capture 76% of the market economics. So go compete for the scraps with people that have an advantage over you. Good luck with that. That's kind of the first thing, right? The second thing is actually, let me unpack that first one a little bit more, just
Yes,
because
yes, please. Thank
it's
you.
a better, faster, cheaper model, and that most people default to cheaper because better and faster is hard. And cheaper, the reason why Kmart no longer exists is because being a lower cost strategy does not exist. There is only the lowest. It's like the Highlander. There can only be one. And so being a cheaper strategy is really a path towards lighting your money on fire. And so the reality is, like, execution is hard in the first camp, innovation is hard in the second camp, and that there are other players that have just massive structural advantages over you. The good news is that the different in the category design angle is more emotional and mental. It is actually not necessarily harder to execute. It is actually cheaper in some cases to do it. And that what you really need to do is, do you have the mental wherewithal and the courage to reject the premise that, maybe the way it was is not the way it should be? And that just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it can't be. And that choosing to be different may earn you some mockery and emotional damage, but you may be actually more successful from an economic perspective. So it's a bit of a choose your hard. There is no free lunch with all of this stuff, but if you actually want to be successful in what you do, I would say category design is the easiest path for that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that answer. And but I wanted to address something that I think is also very difficult, especially so, some of the people that I've worked with are, classic second act founders. They've either worked in the corporate world for 30 years and now they want to pour all their experience, their knowledge, their their authority, if you will, into a product. They lose all that when they leave their corporation, but they still think they have it, and they still think that, and what they want, and they get enamored with their product, right? In fact, I was speaking to one the other day. I was talking about my services too, and he was so convinced that his product, and it was actually a really good product, but he was so convinced that his product was going to sell itself, that it was going to, the classic "if I build it, they will come" thing. But like 99% of the time, I just do not find that these people really even know their target market intimately, including the ones that think they know it. They really don't know who their super consumers are, and really what are those kind of those visceral, non-obvious pains that they have. I mean, and that's one of the things that the category pirates talk about, is really knowing who your super consumers are and what their problems are. I think that's kind of like a great pairing to describe how to start with category design. What if somebody's just kind of starting out with their startup journey, what is the best way that you prescribe to go out there and really get familiar with, get involved with, get into the heads and the minds of your potential super
Yeah.
consumers?
Yeah. I mean, probably the first thing that I would start with is, this sounds a little hokey, right? But um, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I am, the ultimate missionary. I could care less about the money, and I'm solving a very, very clear problem for a very specific audience. And if I don't achieve progress towards that and I die, I will die unhappy. If I achieve progress towards that and I die and I'm penniless, I will die. My life will be fulfilled that way. Versus I could care less who the target is and what they're solving. I just want to make some money or be successful with it. And that, being honest, as whether you're a young founder or a second act founder, like, it's really quite difficult to do that. And so what I think people will find, and actually asking AI to do this, great, because you can ask it to be mean to you and be brutally honest, and it'll tell you, are you actually in it for the wrong reasons or the right reasons? But like, the simple answer is, are you a missionary or mercenary, is the first thing to quite figure out. And the tell is, if you cannot answer the question of what problem you are solving and for whom you are solving it for and why it matters to them, you are 100% a mercenary. You may not look like one, you may not act like one, but you are aimless and without focus. And if you are successful, it will be accidental and it'll probably be fleeting and maybe even unsatisfying at some level. And so that's probably the first thing to start out with. Cause like I would say, I'm a second act founder. I've worked with other folks who are second act founders as well, and seen them. And probably the main thing that I see is the people for whom, you know, they've done well enough where they have safety nets. They don't need the second act for money and they're doing it for fun. They actually do the best because they're having a good time. They're not kind of stressed out about like, I need to extract money from this prospect or whatever. It's like, how do I figure this out? And where is my joy coming from in that? And they actually, ironically, tend to be very successful that way. The people for whom, I can't get hired, I need another job, like I'm kind of stuck here, but they are, in particular, have no real North Star other than I want to be successful. They end up not doing particularly well or feeling trapped in what they do. And so it's a bit of an odd thing to start out with, like, are you a missionary or mercenary? It is the simplest framing for, are you in it for the right reasons or not? And just so that it's not kind of a religious culty type of a thing. Being a missionary means I know very clearly what the problem I am solving. And it can be a super neat, it doesn't have to be eternal salvation or anything like that. It can be very, very specific and very mundane, but something that really matters to a very particular crowd of people. And that when you do that, you have purpose and you have clarity and you know what you are doing, and you are more likely to actually solve that problem that leads to an outcome. And that outcome, when you create an outcome that is solving a specific problem for a specific super, you create abundance. And that's the key part of it. When you create abundance, that unlocks economic opportunity that allows you to charge more than you thought possible with it. And that to me, like when I think about, there was someone in our category design academy, Lydia Flacchino, who an absolute star in the legal tech stage. And in particular, like it's a niche upon a niche, legal tech and the software stack and the SaaS companies that are there, and helping the legal tech startups kind of double and triple their customer lead pipeline. It's incredibly specific. And she was so good at it. And it was her passion. And she was clearly like, she felt the calling towards it. And when we jammed with her in the academy, it was like, look, Lydia, you are a complete missionary. You know exactly what the problem is like, hey, you're running your funnel improperly. You need to be thinking about it this way, change this to shorten the cycle. Like she had very specific things that she was doing. And then she would drive massive outcomes, like the before after companies would come in this pipeline, it would be 4 times as large because she unstuck it.
Jeez.
Right. And then when she did that, we said, what do you charge and what percent of the outcome are you charging? And it was small enough that we said, I think you should quadruple your price. And she said, what? I can't do that. We're like, no, no, no. You can quadruple it, and it is still a small, small fraction of the total outcome that you actually create. And therefore, you can do it with confidence and really no sell people, the people who don't want to come your way. Now, that is a situation that I'm describing of a second act founder who has really created, is on a great trajectory, but she starts out because she cares about this and she has a deep, deep track record about doing it. And she was underpriced for the outcome that she was delivering. And so that was an easy one to fix. Whereas there's another person that I can think of, another second act founder,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, looking for a job, like not really wanting to be a founder, but looking for a job, had skills, had pedigree, but did not have a lot of outcomes. And, when we presented an idea of like, hey, here's an outcome, it's in professional services, like legal and you know what? What's a problem for those folks? It's collections.
Mm-hmm.
You have clients, they don't pay their bill sometimes. Sometimes they forget. Sometimes they don't want to pay their bill. Sometimes they're sneaky angry about something and you got to figure out what it is. And the conundrum is, well, you got some low-level accounts payable person in accounting that they have no idea who that is. Of course they're going to ignore that person. The senior partner doesn't want to get on the phone and be like, hey, Fernando, you owe me some money. Like that's a little bit of I don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
You need somebody in between that has gravitas, but empathy, but also creativity to say, look, I'm not happy about you not paying the bill, but can we work it out where there's a quid pro quo? Can we work it out where you pay 70 cents on the dollar now and then maybe more later on? Or I've seen this done before where a smart lawyer, consultant, banker will say, you know what? How about this? Let's find a happy medium. You pay 60 cents on the dollar, but I need you to introduce me to 6 of your friends. And that doesn't cost you anything, but I may end up with more business beyond that. Like, does that make like there are clever outcomes that someone in between can do. And this person just kind of was like, I don't like how that sounds. I don't want to be that person. And it was just kind of heartbreaking because that was a clear unmet need. But that person was kind of solving for, I'm actually just kind of looking for a job and therefore this is not a good fit for me. And so to me, the mercenary missionary spectrum, that test is the simplest way to kind of have a crystal ball of are you going to be successful or not? Because the natural questions that follow through, you don't have to understand category design. You just follow the natural, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And then you'll find out you'll be successful.
That's so enlightening. I do want to get into the Category Design Academy in a minute, but that's so mind blowing because I think you first got to start with yourself before you even think about doing the qualitative, quantitative market research or going to the trade shows and talking to who you think are going to be your supers. You almost kind of have to have had experience with them yourself and fall in love with them. Like it seems like as though Lydia, was that her name?
Yes.
Yeah. Seems like as though Lydia kind of was already in love with these people. She had a passion about them.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to me with second act founders, I'm a second act founder and I meet with a lot of second act founders and I just have such a level of empathy with them. Like there's this, I don't want to say his name because you'll probably hear the podcast, but he's been in a kind of a dirty industry. What's the better way to say dirty industry? Kind of a more blue collar industry for a long time, been very successful. I mean, he was traveling all over the world, setting up, facilities all over the world on behalf of large companies. And now that he's reached a certain age and he's not doing that anymore, he wants to package his knowledge in a series of courses to kind of really help professionalize the industry. And it just kind of seems to be sort of flailing around, not really knowing what to do. And I've helped him, get to a certain point. But I think, one of the things is I want to help him, and I want to help people like him, because they have they have so much experience and knowledge, and they want to leave a legacy in the world. They want to leave a mark in the world. And I just, one of the things I want them to do is I want to see them leave that legacy. I want to see them feel that sort of sense of satisfaction that they were able to do that, as kind of like their last hurrah, kind of like what I'm doing, right? And so I feel that. So I really like that perspective. I'd never thought about it that way before. So, I just wanted to tell you something, a little anecdote that I think you'll kind of get a kick out of. I was a speaker at the Content Entrepreneur Expo in August in Cleveland, Ohio. That's Joe Pulizzi's deal. He's now part of what's called Tilt Publishing, which is a joint venture with Lulu.com. And so I spoke about the Startup Book, which was my book that I published last year. And one of the lines I had in there was, "He who controls the vocabulary controls the industry." And after my talk, 3 or 4 people came up to me later on and said that my talk was worth the whole, the whole price they paid for the thing because of that thing. So I asked the guys, like, why did that, really touch you? He said, because it was different. Nobody else is talking. All these content entrepreneur, content creator experts are talking about more variations of being consistent and right, creating funnels and, more and more content. And I was like the only one that said something different. Not different when it comes, because I was just basically kind of repeating what you guys talk about. But for the rest of the world, it was different. And I thought that was fascinating, because I think it's all about being, about being different, seeing those sort of non-obvious opportunities out there. So with regards to the Category Design Academy, is this part of your goal of creating, is it 100,000 category designers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the program itself and about the end goal with this.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about, so Christopher and I are very different, but we are brothers from another mother, right? And he grew up in industry as a CMO in Silicon Valley, and then became an advisor and consultant. And I grew up in consulting, so I was a senior partner at the Cambridge Group. I worked there about 18 years, mostly B2C work. Christopher did B2B work.
So you're familiar with spreadsheets?
Yes, I know lots about spreadsheets. I've done every role in the consulting industry, and my favorite were analyst and senior partner. Like, I didn't like the middle stuff I didn't like that. But the earliest and the latest one was great. And when you think about, and Joe Pine has a great book coming out on transformations around this, is that as a consultant or advisor, you have an opportunity to really impact a CEO and an organization in a way that is, when all the stars line up, can be very magical. We've had many wins that way. The reality is, it is a bespoke industry that is, it's a bit like being a private chef. Like, I can't be McDonald's and serve billions and billions. It's a what is custom meal. It's different every time, only limited number of seats. And so part of the reason why I started to write with HBR in 2009, and then Christopher wrote Play Bigger with that, was we wanted to scale our impact. We thought we had a message to get out, and that, Super Consumers was my first book and my first HBR article. It was kind of stemmed from this idea of consumers, not that difficult. But there's a lot of people making it very complicated. Like, this is a very simple way. And my partners were very upset with me for publishing the book, because complexity makes money, right? Oh, it's
Right.
complex. You have to be able to hire somebody to solve it. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, yeah, if you're Anheuser-Busch and you have 40 or 50 brands, then you need some really robust, consumer work. But if you're a startup and you have one brand in one category, like, this is pretty basic, right? So, like, that's kind of where it started, was like, hey, I can simplify some complexity in the world that'll help a lot of people. So we leveled that up when, Pirate Cole, Nicholas Cole, joined the band, or helped us start the band. We were going to write another book on category design, and he helped us, and he turned us on to Substack. We did that. That allowed us to help more people at scale than traditional books were. And, so that was great. So our scale went up. But then what we discovered was that we still had this kind of barbell thing where we could really help drive transformation for a very few number of people through consulting. You could help a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people a little bit by educating them on kind of what the content was, but they were still like, this is great. I've learned something. What do I do next? Right. And so that's kind of how the Category Design Academy was born of like, okay, we need to be able to help people. That's not consulting and not the 7, 8 figures that we would charge for that, and with a limited audience. How do we do this at scale? And so that's largely been the mission of Category Pirates is like, how do we help the most number of people without making us feel cranky because we're giving all of our time here and there, at kind of a ladder price points that go from free, like podcasts, HBO articles are all free, to $20 a month at Substack, to 350 at the founding tier, all the way up to a 200,000, a 2 million, or a $20 million consulting project. Like, how do you help people at every price point along the way without burning us out while helping people and meeting them where we can with that? And so the academy was really in response to, well, let's try this where for 10 grand, can we help people? Not everyone can do it, but can we help people where it's a little like group therapy, so to speak? Like, you don't get individual attention. Boy, oh boy, do you learn from other people and watching them kind of get on the hot seat. And like, when we
Mm-hmm.
turn on the hot lights and be like, what problem are you solving? Are you missionary? Like, we do that work in love to get people to really be refined about what they do. And so we did that. We did the first one we launched 2 years ago, and it was so much fun. Probably, I think what Christopher and I would say, the most meaningful work that we do, not only because it's rewarding to see the Lydias and the Pablos and the Dannys and all the people that have gone through it, they succeed with it, but for
Yeah.
us to see their transformation from who they were to what they can become. And oftentimes, it's not anything that we're doing other than being their biggest cheerleaders. And again, like you said, helping them, he who controls the language controls the category. Like, helping them understand how to frame them and claim their opportunity in a way that has higher pricing, that has a greater outcome, but then also giving them scale so that they don't have to be there doing it all of that. It's been our ability to help the most amount of people. Like, if you think about, there's nothing that has changed the world like a small group of people, right? And that we're doing that same model over and over again
Mm-hmm.
with the hopes that, either through us or through them helping other people, we'll get to 100,000, because I think that's kind of the singular purpose in the world. We charge money because we have given away scholarships, and we found that it is counterproductive and actually has the net opposite effect, which is kind of odd, right? Is that because what we have found is that 10 grand is a lot of money for sure, but rule of thumb, you ought to be spending and willing to invest 1% to 10% of revenue in improving your business. And so 10 grand at 10%, 100 grand in revenue, that's about the minimum that we would suggest. If you have less than that, we'd probably say not a good fit for you. Like, wait till this is the right time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, if it's at 1%, you have $1 million revenue business, that's great. It should be easier to afford, and it's about the right time. If you're a monster business at 10 million or 100 million, then maybe bespoke consulting is right for you. Or maybe you want to hang out with other people. Whatever is all good, but we're trying to figure out, 10 grand felt like the right number where we could do a couple things. One, ensure that your business was far enough along so that no one was wasting money. And then two is, while we believe and we have seen people unlock, lots and lots of money and revenue from it, our simple goal is like, do we see a clear path for you to make 10 extra money in a short period of time? That's the goal, right? Is like,
Yeah.
if you're 100 grand in revenue, then, well, how do we get you a 10x return? You got to make 10x on a 10 grand is 100 grand. We got to double your revenue. So how do we do that? Can we double your price? Can we double your customers? Can we double the amount your customers buy with you? Like, what needs to be true for that? And if we don't see some combination of that to be like, yeah, that should be doable, and we all collectively believe it, not that it'll happen for sure or when it'll happen, but
Mm-hmm.
we have to eyes wide and walk in knowing, like, that's really a legit outcome. Then absolutely it's a great fit and everyone's going to have a blast. And again, the goal is to just be there to equip and see the folks kind of launch out of the nest, and hopefully they are helping other people after that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the mindset that we have with it, and because we actually think that's the right part of the journey where we can help the most people. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of second act founders would fall into that camp.
There's so much additional stuff that I want to ask you, but I want to be respectful of the time. I could spend a Joe Rogan's 3 hours interviewing you, or Rich Roll, another guy who spends a lot of time. You know, but wanted to get into a little bit about your Substack. So, because I think that what you guys are doing, and it was, I guess, thanks to Nicholas Cole, who kind of turned you onto this format, is creating your Substack as a repository for all of your mini books, your exclusive podcast episodes for founding members, and etc., your audio books, as well as just your regular articles and other stuff, right? As opposed to like using something like Circle or Mighty Networks. I know you all are friends with Gina Bianchini from Mighty Networks, as well as instead of just having that all live on a website that that they can access by, subscribing to a traditional, email platform like that, Active Campaign or HubSpot or, Kit, et cetera. So tell me why you're loving Substack as a way to kind of indoctrinate, for want of a better term, all of the
Yeah.
potential category pirates out there.
Yeah, no, it was a bit, again, all kudos goes to Cole, who's the OG and category king of digital writing. Like no one's gonna be more successful in the writing game than him.
Yeah, his
And
ghostwriting book was fantastic.
yeah. He is incredible. And all credit to him for helping us get it launched and having leading us old guys like, oh, this is the way that might be the future. I mean, to be honest, when we started out on Substack, it was simple to use and great, but it's not where it is now, where there's a lot more network effects that are happening. So in part, it was a bit of baby steps of like, we were writing another book. We were actually pretty far along. We're like, do we publish it with, Christopher's old publisher at HarperCollins? We go to HBR. Who do we do this with? And in part, we wanted to, this was us kind of rejecting the premise of the book writing category, right? Which is like, you go away for 18 months, you write a book, and then your editor, who again, lovely editors out there, but most of them are not in the arena themselves, right? They read, they comment, and you all hope that you've hit the mark, and then you launch it, and then you market the heck out of it, and then maybe something happens with it. But I would say the dominant reason that we chose Substack was the ability to write in public and get feedback early on, right? Because like, the revenue part was nice, but we didn't know this was going to happen when we started it. But it was the ability to get market signal. Somebody saying, oh, this one got a lot of likes, this one got a lot of shares, it got a lot of comments. What was resonating about that? And so it's actually fascinating because there's such a dearth of a feedback loop when it comes to writing
Yeah.
traditionally. Like this was a huge unlock for us on that. Number one, the ability to make writing a two-way door and not a one-way door. Like when you write a book and it's published and it's printed, like I want to change the title, like ain't happening until a second edition comes out or whatever. And the ability just to kind of say, oh yeah, there was a typo, our bad, change it, gone. And so, or you know what, we want to update this, or sometimes, there are any number of unfortunate books out there from very smart people that have like, look at our case study, it's Enron. Like, oh, maybe you want to, do over on that one, right? But like the digital flexibility, in addition to the digital feedback, super helpful. And then I think the third thing now that has really come into effect is with Substack Notes. And I think the virality and the network effects of Substack has become its own little social media platform.
Yes.
And that part has been pretty meaningful and dramatic. And, I would say the last one, and I should probably have said this first, but like, as a super consumer guy, is that the reality of the book industry is that not everyone who buys books reads them. Not everyone who reads books loves them, right? And that anybody who buys, well, the vast majority of people aren't reading books. That's kind of one. Secondly, the people who buy the books, they're not reading all their books. Some of them are just sitting in a pile somewhere off and like, oh, I bought it. Or you might read it and skim it once. And so, like, this idea of books as the dominant way to get an idea out there is pretty stupid, actually, because there's a lot of friction and a lot of people who are like, I just don't like this category. Why am I in it? I suppose I have to be, kind of like a student buying a textbook. Whereas Substack is all discretionary and it's all like I can turn it on and off and I'm browsing here or there. guess what? The super consumers of reading are on Substack, and they're reading this and they're reading that. And it's like the purest expression of the marketplace from a super consumer standpoint. And so I would say digital feedback, the digital flexibility, and then the digital network effects, in addition to the fact that this is the super geo, a digital super geo of where the super consumers are, kind of makes it a no brainer. And that I'm sure there are other lovely, email newsletter platforms, but I think Substack either has or is close to getting escape velocity.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that it can combine, the readability of a newsletter with the discoverability of a social network, because there wasn't discoverability before newsletters, until Substack kind of invented it, and then Spark Loop, which then got absorbed by ConvertKit, or which Kit is now incorporating that. But the other thing too that I like about it is now that you can kind of create a sort of like a little website, like the category pirates.news. Substack is organized like a website with menus. You have the menu item of the mini books. You have the menu items of the podcast, etc. And you don't even have to pay for it unless people subscribe, and they get a percentage of it. So
They're doing great on all the ancillary services that used to be a lot of hee haw for book authors to do and stuff. In reality, I remember the shock when the head of HBR Publishing, when I turned in my manuscript, was like, "Good job. Now the hard work begins." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's all the selling and the marketing of the book that none of the publishers really do. I mean, HBR does quite a bit because they're HBR and they have the podcast and all that, but like the vast majority of authors are left to their own devices, and that Substack to be able to do that is great. And that, I mean, the other part that I would say is that it just reduces the friction for not only reading but also writing, and that writing is a massive superpower that I wish I had started earlier on the writing game. And that I would say my consulting success is largely driven by my willingness to kind of eat glass for when I was working hard at becoming a better writer. And that part of it is super important. You meet a lot of people in life that are like, "Oh, I'm a great writer." I'm like, "Well, why would you say that?" Like, "Why, I was an English major." "Oh, okay, that tells me nothing," and the like. Or,
yeah,
"I went to some fancy pants school or whatever and stuff." And it's like, how do we judge if you're a great writer? And there's a lot of people, in the peanut gallery saying, "Oh, I don't like this," or whatever. Is like, are you writing? Are you in the arena? And are you getting better? And that this idea of great writer versus not is stupid. That the idea of are you improving as a writer is the more valuable one. And that, truth be told, my wife and I talk about Second Act Founder. We just launched our own Substack.
yeah,
And
I saw that.
and yeah, and that's partly an ode to writing and like, let's keep writing and doing this, but also, as we talk about, I would say writing is a superpower, one. Number two, it's a superpower you can get stronger at as you age. And I am desperately afraid of going senile, so I will keep writing so that I don't go senile in the life. And then thirdly is, you know, the ability to be a category designer or a second act founder. In our case, like we have three kids, two are in college, one's a high school senior, and we're looking at empty nester time, hopefully. And that it's a what's that life going to be like? And I've seen many people like scary stories of like, your kids are gone. And they're like, "Who are you? What are we doing here in this marriage?" And like, and we wanted to do something together. And so, we will probably, I grew up in Hawaii. I was born there and we spent a lot of time in the Big Islands. And so we have been writing about, from a business angle, it's called vacation design, which is not a
Mhm.
new idea, but like, how do you create, lasting family memories for a multi-generational trip on the Big Island, and specifically in the Waikoloa area of Hawaii. And we've spent a lot of time there. And so, guess what? When you spend a lot of time, you know a lot of tips and tricks. And so, it's a completely different writing style than Category Pirates, because we've had people complain to us in Category Pirates, like, "Hey, man, your stuff's too long. Like, I'm sitting on the can and I can't finish what you're reading," and the like. And like, okay, that's not the goal that we have. But short, quick hits, simple tips that make a massive difference. That when you're planning a complex multi-family, multi-general vacation, like, how do we make life easier, save you time and money, and ensure the odds that you have some lasting memories?
Yeah.
Otherwise, most vacations are lighting money on fire. So how do you make sure that you come out way with something that lasts? And so, who knows if it'll be effective, but
We can
my
watch you do it in live, right? We can watch
yeah, no,
you
that
build it. Yeah.
that's the beauty is, I think, again, trying to, keep our swords sharp, like get in the arena and rebuild and create again is, watch as we do it, watch as we define success differently, because it's a very different entity than category pirates. It's been super fun. And
Yeah.
again, learning a lot, and hopefully will inspire other people to launch a Substack, because I would say every second act founder probably should have a Substack, because it's signal. You want that digital feedback, and you want the digital network that comes with it, and the digital flexibility to figure out what you want to launch. And if you're going to be a second act founder, please, please, please launch a digital business first before you launch a physical business. The digital business will help your physical business. That's kind of our PSA.
Okay, well, that's very good advice. So, one other thing about your Substack, you have a founders level, founders tier, which I joined. And one of the benefits of joining the founders tier is not only do you get access to all of your mini books, which I think you guys have written more than 200, right? That's an insane amount, which is fantastic. I've been binging on all of your mini books since I became a founders member. But you also get access to the Eddie bot. So basically everything that you've written has been rolled into this Eddie bot, which is built on the Delphi platform. And you can literally have a conversation with this Eddie bot about category design. And it's funny because when I interact with the digital AI version of you, it's like I'm talking to you. I mean, it has your same style, it has your, etc. And so I wanted to compare that to the, 300, $350 compared to the 10,000 of the digital marketing, not digital marketing, but the design, the category design academy. And I'll put this out there and correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the core knowledge is going to be the same. The difference is going to be is the human insight, the community. And, because working with your bot is great, but I sometimes feel like as though, I really wish that, somebody with a different experience than I do could look at this, iron sharpens iron, et cetera.
Mhm.
So, I mean, is that kind of a fair assessment, a fair comparison?
It's part of it. I would say that there are different written content, video content that is in the academy that is not in the Substack, nor therefore in the Pirate Eddie bot. So some of the content is gated, not so it's in the academy, not in the Substack or the Pirate Eddie bot. The second thing is what you're exactly saying is right. Like, you can read all about, being a boxer, and it's another thing to step into the ring with your headgear on and get punched in the face, right? In that so much of, I would say, category design is some combination of brutal honesty. Hey man, like, you're solving your problem, you're not solving their problem. Or I don't know why I care about that problem that you're suggesting. Or so some of that is just like, you know, friends telling friends, you got a big old booger on your nose, so go clean it off. Or, yeah, those pants don't make you look good, man. Like, you got to have that friend that tells you the truth that way.
Yeah.
And the second part of it is radical courage of like, hey, you have something. Let me pump you up and let me tell you, as somebody with battle scars, you have something unique and something special. And not only are you being a coward by not going full on out, you're being selfish. What do you mean I'm being selfish? You're depriving the world of a solution that could meaningfully help people. And if you don't do it, we're collectively going to be pissed at you for not giving the world this new abundance. And so those two things, like, you can kind of get that from a bot, maybe, but not really. And it's probably not going to be the same as in a group setting. And that there's something about, you know, um, like, I would say life transformation could happen by reading the Bible, but it most likely happens in a church or a small group. Running a marathon, you could kind of do it reading a manual or watching a video. It helps to be part of a running group that holds you accountable. Like, it's just kind of, category design academy is part of the human nature. I think the Eddie bot is designed. Well, first it was like, we need an Eddie bot because, like, did we write about this? I don't remember. We needed that for ourselves. So
I
we were
heard that
solving,
podcast episode when you
yeah, that one part of it. But then,
yeah.
I think the Delphi platform has been great for us because it's such a great large context window. and functions like a great librarian. And that I think the reality of AI is awesome, but the training data is more valuable than the AI itself. And being specific about how to use it. So partly we were just trying to make sure that at 350, a very approachable price point, we think.
Yeah.
And that, again, solving the category of learning is that books are great. Substack is great, but you know, sometimes people just want the answer to the question that they have. And you don't want to read through 200 pages or read through a 30-minute, like, zebra holes of, me or Christopher telling random stories that you don't really, these guys are repeating themselves yet again. Just answer the darn question. And then, you ask it of the AI bot, it tells you the answer straight away. And so, like, at some level, the ultimate manifestation of reading is like, just tell me what it is, and it's shortcutting that so that you can get to the outcome that you desire faster. So, like, again, it's a lot of this, like, we love our books. How do we disrupt it and create a new thing that makes it even better? Let's do Substack. We love Substack. How do we design something new that gets to the outcome meaningfully faster, cheaper, better? Like, let's do this. That's, and I'm sure there'll be a next that will come from that we haven't yet seen. But that's the whole purpose of the Pirate Eddie bot on the founding tier. The other bit that we're trying to do is, again, building in public so people can watch and repeat themselves. Because, like, I do think that having a Substack, probably having a Delphi, probably having a Mighty Networks, that trifecta is a must for any entrepreneur who wants to have zero cost marketing or even make marketing a profit center. But a second act founder, all of those are great things. But, like, on the founding tier, yeah, it's 350, a lot of money compared to a book or $20 a month. And so how do we make it a no-brainer where we're delivering 10x the value back? So we've engineered it so that there's $3,500 plus of value that comes back, and even more so because now you get the Big Island memory making Substack for my wife and I as part of that, and that has some real value that kicks it up to $6,000. And so, like,
Yeah.
we're trying to get it to the point where the give to get is always in your favor, but in a way that the consumer feels great about it, but that we feel good about it because our time is precious. But when we're offering digital services and goods, it's completely scalable. So we are super happy to offer that.
That's fantastic. Last question here. One of the really happy benefits I've seen from the Category Pirates work on category design is that you have also created a bunch of subcategories or the potential for other people to kind of expand on some of these things. So, for example, you guys have, kind of doubled down on writing mini books, and obviously you have the traditional books, which some of them are roll-ups of many books. Like I think the 22 Laws of Category Design was that. Then you Substack, right? You're really kind of innovating the use of Substack. Lightning strikes as sort of like lightning strikes as a marketing tactic strategy, etc., has got a potential. And I'm looking at that because I suddenly realized in retrospect, gosh darn it, I've been doing a form of lightning strikes for the last 15 years and I didn't even know it. And so I think, so and this is really more of a comment than anything, but I think that with the category design concepts, there's a whole bunch of other things that are kind of like spin-offs, if you will, as potential categories or potential subcategories. Have you been finding that yourself in terms of potentials for other categories to form as a result of this?
New categories always beget new categories, and that's part of the abundance angle of why category design was so important. And that, new categories that are emerged from another new category, some of them we are taking advantage of, and some of them, like, we can't or have other priorities. And so we are more than happy for other people to run with it. Like you mentioned, Chris Stanley's doing great, becoming the mini book guy, and he was very kind. Like, hey, can I run with this? We're like, go ahead, no problem. And you know that makes us totally delighted. And that for the lightning strike book, that one is different too, as you said. Like, it was a new design to roll up Substacks into a book and publish them twice and feel good about it, because what, format matters, right? Like, Substack is great, but sometimes it's really valuable to have it all in one place in a book. And that the lightning strike marketing book, what the thing that is different about that is, it started out like 22 Laws, we're going to aggregate our Substack mini books, but it's become a field guide to executing a lightning strike, where the goal is, how do you get a lightning strike on a page? And then how do you take some tests to figure out, are you ready to launch a lightning strike? You may not be. And we don't want you to light your money on fire. So let's figure that out. And you can do that analog style with a book, or you can do that with a lightning strike agent, which we are launching alongside the book. And so I would actually say part of the reason why we priced it at $100 is not to try to maximize dollars or whatever, but to kind of get people to pay attention. This is a different category of book. It is more of a field guide than a textbook. Yes, you'll be thinking, but you will be doing. So people who are doing and, hey, I'm about to launch $100,000 lightning strike. Yeah, I'll drop $100 to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Or I think I can do a lightning strike for $0, like you wrote about. Let me buy that for $100 and see if I can do that. So all those are true. But the agents, and it's actually not one agent, but a team of agents that we're launching where, yes, you can read the book, but we also want you to consider buying the AI agent, which will launch at the same time as the book. That, somewhere between the book and the academy was where we're going to price it, where if you don't want to join the academy, it's not the right fit for you, or the budget's not right, you can use the agent somewhere in between. It'll function like the Eddie AI bot, much more specifically geared towards, we liken it to a personal trainer. Hey, Fernando, that's great. Stop delaying and distracting, get on those push-ups and do that lightning strike work. And so that's what we're launching. May not work. We think it will. We think agents are the future, but we are going to see, but we'll never stop designing new categories because it's fun, but also because it helps us advance the mission.
That's fantastic. I think that's the perfect place to end on that note. Eddie, I think everybody knows where they can get a hold of you and the Category Pirates. Eddie Yoon on LinkedIn, right? Christopher
Eddie Woodgrow. Eddie Yoon at LinkedIn, and then Eddie Woodgrow on Twitter. So yeah.
Eddie Woodgrow. Okay. Would Woodgrow. Okay, perfect.
But just find us on categorypirates.com or whichever of our sites, and good to go.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Eddie. And we will see everybody in the next episode of the Viral Genius Podcast. See you then. To get future episodes in your inbox, just subscribe at strikemarketing.news. You'll also get new articles, tutorials, workshops, and events about category design, founder-led marketing, the organic AI content cascade, and strike marketing. Just subscribe at strikemarketing.news.